When you hear the word community, what does that mean to you?
It means joy to me. It means people coming together. It means raising a barn. I guess we don't raise barns too much anymore, but in ways, Koinonia has raised a lot of barns. We started helping people with home repairs, and then let's start building houses. And it means too people, the petty side of people, and the community. But when you make a commitment to each other, you've made a promise to talk it out.
Yeah.
And it's so easy, I think in the U.S., not so much in rural. Maybe that's why I like the rural life better. It's if suddenly you don't like somebody, or you don't like this church, or you just move, you just go away. But in community, you've made at least an intentional community like Koinonia. But I think I've seen it beyond Koinonia for sure. You are there for the good times and the bad times.
Yeah,
and you make a commitment to work it out.
Yeah.
So we serve God at and through this place called Koinonia, and we're there to support each other and to support our town as much as we can, in the ways we can, most of which, as I say, are very, very small and quiet. So.
Yeah. Welcome to the Americus podcast. My name is John Schroeder, and today I am joined by Bren Dubay. Bren Dubay is the director of Koinonia Farm, which means that she oversees a lot of the mission and vision of the community. She also helps with the training and just helping people understand what Koinonia is all about. And so, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming and joining us on the podcast.
Well, John, I really appreciated the invitation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it has been a blessing to me. So for coming into Americus in around March of last year, I did a few things. I read a little bit about Americus. I started reading books, started reading articles, just because I wanted to get to know the city. And I read about, for example, the 2007 tornado that really affected the city and the surrounding county. And so, but another book that I read was a book called The Class of 65 that had to do with Koinonia and Americus. And so I read that, and it was challenging. It was something that it really helped me understand a little bit of the history of both Koinonia and Americus. But when I came into Americus, I didn't know how to connect with Koinonia. So I had a friend of mine who told me about you, gave me your number, and I called you, and you were so welcoming. You were so just hospitable to me. And then you invited me to the farm for lunch. I got a brief tour of the place. And so now we're here sitting at the podcast. And so again, thank you so much for your hospitality. Thank you so much for just being a part of the community and for sharing a little bit of your story. So when we fill out the online forms, one of the questions we ask is, are you born and raised in Americus? You're not from Americus, but you've been living here for a long time. So tell me a little bit about you. Tell me about where you've born, where you're raised. Tell me a little bit about your family dynamics.
Okay, I am from Texas. I was born in Angleton, Texas, which was a small Texas town on the Gulf Coast.
Okay.
And really, turns out it was only about 50 miles from Houston. But when I was a child, Houston was this big, scary thing, miles and miles, universe away. And I was raised by my grandparents.
Okay.
And spent, though, a lot of time in my godparents' restaurant.
Okay.
In Angleton. It was called the Angleton Grill.
Nice.
And that's where I
What
learned.
did they serve there?
Well, it was great food. My godmother could make the best pies and cakes you ever wanted to taste. But they had a steam table, and I particularly liked the mashed potatoes. I remember as a child really enjoying the mashed potatoes.
That's great.
But I learned how to ride my trike in that restaurant after hours, of course.
Yes.
learned to walk in that restaurant, said my first sentence in that restaurant. So when I think of Angleton, I think of it was a very magical time. We lived in a lot of different places in Texas ultimately, but those were my formative years, and that restaurant is kind of I always come back to that Angleton Grill.
Yeah. Well, what was life like as far as you, like, personally? What was your personality? Were you a very chippy person? Were you kind of an introvert? Kind of what was your life like growing up?
I guess I would say I was a very imaginative person,
That's a good word.
using my imagination quite a bit. There was a point in Angleton when we lived down the street from the library.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with books. And I guess I was an introvert, unless I was acting something out or singing.
That's right.
You know. And I would go to the library, check out lots of books, go outside, climb into a big oak tree, read all the books, and come back in and turn them in and check out some more.
I love it.
So I was reading was very, very important to me. So
Okay. What were some of the books that you were reading?
oh my goodness. That's a long time ago since I was a child. But I remember reading a book, and I don't. It was a picture book. Early on, it was a picture book. I remember that, but it had pictures of saints.
Okay.
And I didn't know what a saint was. I decided that I wanted to be one, even though I didn't know what they were. Of course, I grew up and realized that, well, I married a saint, but I'm not the saint.
Well, that's great. So being creative, did you do any plays growing up, or did you get a chance to do any music or instruments or anything like that?
Right. I dabbled in instruments a little bit, not anything serious. I wrote my first play in the 7th grade. I really didn't fully get into acting until the end of high school, actually. I think that was probably from being shy. But then in college, I was a theater major, actually.
Wow, that's great.
Also church history, theology, philosophy, history. I loved all of the subjects, but I worked in professional theater for most of my life until coming to Americus, even though in 2011 I got to be a part of a play with the Sumter Players. Really enjoyed that. Wish I had more time to do things like that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Yeah, my son does a few plays, and he really enjoys the theater and things like that, and just being a part of just creating that story.
Yeah.
And so, well, let me ask you this. In light of that, then, if we're looking into just kind of that play, were your parents encouraging that kind of career path? I mean, what did they want for you? What was kind of experience just kind of growing up with those dynamics?
Well, like I said, I live with my grandparents, and I don't come from a background of what should I say? I was a poor kid, and my family didn't have an education, and but they loved me, and if I wanted to go to the library all day, that was fine.
Yeah.
And so I was always encouraged, but I never really talked to them about a career path. It just sort of unfolded.
Yeah. So, like in the outdoors, kind of what were your activities outside?
Well, I love sports. Baseball is a passion of mine.
Wow.
To me, baseball is poetry. It's like this beautiful dance. And I didn't get to play too much because I was kind of on the cusp there where girls didn't get to do very much. But if I'd stayed in Angleton, I would have gotten to play basketball, which is one of my regrets because we moved somewhere else, and girls could be on the drill team, but they couldn't. They didn't play sports.
Yeah.
But I loved volleyball. I loved soccer. I did play soccer as an adult.
That's great.
Broke my finger twice, and was being rolled into the operating room. And the nurse said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I was playing soccer." And there was this pause, and she said, "I thought you played that with your feet."
Yeah.
And I said, goalie.
Yeah, I was about to say, you must have been the goalie.
I was the goalie.
Yeah,
yes.
that's right. That's right. No, that's great. I mean, sports obviously is a great way for community too, right? To meet people and connect in that way. So do you still follow sports now as far as with baseball?
I certainly do, and I have to be very careful because I know I'm in Atlanta Braves territory, and I like the Braves.
Yeah.
I like them, but the Houston Astros. I mean that's where I grew up, and I'm very passionate about the team, even when they do silly things.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. That's great. All right, so you're in high school. You're what kind of person were you like in high school? What were the dynamics going on? What were maybe some challenges, obstacles, things that you enjoyed about high school?
Well, one of the things that popped into my mind is I was president of the German club. Now, I could not speak a word of German to you right now, but I was president of the German club, and we would have these bake sales.
Okay.
And I was just very passionate about the club, and I knew that we needed to sell these cakes in order to do the things that we wanted to do as a club. So I spent a lot of time convincing people at local stores and shopping malls and things like that to please buy our pies and cakes. So no, I was a good student. Really had some great teachers. Had a great math teacher. If I didn't have a great math teacher, I wasn't so good in math. But if I had one that was really could explain things to me, I could do it. But a couple of times in high school, I sort of stumbled over the math. But
yeah. Well, so if you're sitting there, you're in high school, you're thinking about college. Where do you go? Where are you thinking about going, and where do you end up?
Again, I guess because of my family background, I didn't have a lot of talks about going to. I mean, everybody knew I was going to go to college. I knew I was going to go to college, but there wasn't, the college visits and going and reading a whole lot of information. I mean, then you didn't have the internet for sure. So I ended up going first to the local community college.
Okay.
And then after that, I went to the University of St. Thomas in Houston. It was a graduate school. By graduate school is when I really did a lot of the searching and figuring out. I had a scholarship to the University of Toronto and to Harvard for graduate school in church history, actually.
Wow.
And so that was more of the time, a time when I really was doing the looking and reading and applying.
So what was drawing you to church history, theology? Where did that come from?
That is has been a love of mine from forever, and part of coming to Koinonia is had all these separate interests. I had the church. I had church history. I had the theater. I had all of but they were like separate boxes.
Yeah. And
coming to Koinonia in a way, I could pull all of that together. I did think part of the big reason I was led to Koinonia was because of my writing, but I've been here almost 20 years and haven't had much time to write.
That's right.
But I'm hoping someday when it's no longer my turn to sit in the chair and wear the scarlet D on my forehead, that I will be able to be in the community writing more and sharing stories. So.
Okay. Yeah. So tell me the year that you got to Americus, Georgia. What led you to get here?
Okay, another passion of mine is Montessori education.
Okay,
and
what is that?
Maria Montessori was actually a medical doctor, and it's a long story. Just very quickly, she came upon by observation that if you give children the right environment for their stage of development, they will naturally learn. So she just continually figured out what that best environment was. And it almost became the public school. Woodrow Wilson brought her over. She's Italian, but we had World War I, and then we had World War II. But anyway, my children went through a Montessori school.
Okay.
And so at one point, I had the opportunity to help them at the school get the 12 to 14-year-old time period. And so I was very involved.
That's
great. And I came to Americus on their rite of passage trip, these students. I came here to do a week of service at Habitat.
Okay.
And we helped it was right before the Global Village opened. And so I was here with that group of students in 2003.
Okay, yeah, 2003.
Right. And
okay, so I did miss a little bit a part of your life, so I want to go back for just a second.
Okay.
You mentioned kids. So tell me a little bit about your husband and your children.
Okay. Jim is just one of the most decent. He's just great. I enjoy him. We have the same birthday. Yesterday was our birthday, as a matter of fact.
Happy birthday! That's great.
Thank you. We met at the University of St. Thomas, and he was always very supportive of me and all of the things that I wanted to do. And he was an English major, and he was going to go on and get his PhD in English. Both of his parents were teachers. His father was the head of the math department at University of St. Thomas, and his mother was chair of the math department at the high school where she taught.
Wow.
And so what he decided to do was to become a firefighter.
Okay.
So he could have a very flexible schedule, be very much a part of raising our children, and give me the flexibility to go and do all these things that I've done.
Yeah.
So he spent 25 years in the fire department in Houston, at the same time teaching here and there from third grade all the way to college. So he did do a lot of teaching.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Firemen. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, first responders, good people, got to have a heart, for people. And just, I've talked to a lot of firefighters, just, about the things they have to experience and see and be a part of, and just coming home, and just trying to live out their lives, knowing that they're, part of other people's stories. So,
right.
Thank you so much for his service, because it helps, and it's big. All right, so we're back into Americus 2003, and you go to Habitat for Humanity. How do you get connected with Koinonia Farm?
Okay, well, of course, Koinonia gave birth to Habitat. What happened was we were packing up the car to head back to Texas. I was very anxious to get back to Texas. I had another group of students that I was going to take to Costa Rica, so I really needed to get back. And Grandma Jackie, who's still here, she's totally responsible for me being and God probably, not probably.
Yeah.
She drove around the corner, and I looked up because I thought she was driving a little too fast. And I was putting the last box into the trunk. I was just about to close it. I mean, I have a visual memory of this. And she says, "Oh, I'm so glad I caught you. I want you to go out and see where Habitat started." And, to be perfectly honest with you, inside myself, there's that kind of dark human being where I'm going, I don't want to go see some farm out in the middle of nowhere. Please, I need to get on, the road.
Yeah.
But what I said was, like a polite Texan, yes, ma'am.
That's right. What I was thinking was this. What I said was, yes, ma'am.
Yes. And then she started giving me directions. And here comes my personality flaw again, because, directions, if they're spoken to me, it suddenly becomes a language that I don't understand, sort of like Charlie Brown and the adults. But I'm listening, and then I start thinking, I'm going to try to get there. I'm trying to follow her directions. I'll make about 2 turns. I'll be lost, and we'll get on the road to Texas. Mm-hmm. And then out of her mouth comes, well, some people get lost when they go out to try to find out where Koinonia is. So I'm going to have you follow me.
Okay. Yeah.
So we went there. We were only there about 45 minutes, and I just felt something incredibly wonderful and special. And it meant a lot to me because I saw the students, and these were 14-year-olds leaving, going into their sophomore year.
Okay.
The school at that time went through the 9th. And it was like they were seeing a lot, because Montessori is very, very much about community and taking care of each other and taking care of the larger community and, doing what you can.
Yeah.
So I was very, very, moved by that experience. And so I went back and I ordered all these books about Clarence Jordan's books, and then his talks were still on cassette tapes. So I ordered those and went off to Costa Rica, and
it was just spinning.
It was just spinning the whole time. And then this new group of students, we were planning the trips for the next year, and I thought we should take, one. We were a little trip heavy, so I said let's do not quite so many. Well, they weren't hearing of this because their classmates got to go, and so I had Legacy of Faith, which was the It's what Faith Fuller made before she made Briars in the Cotton Patch, the documentary about Koinonia.
Yes.
It's about 7 minutes or, 10 minutes. And so I showed it to them and said, this is a place we could go visit, really thinking that these kids from Houston, big Houston, would not have any interest in coming to Georgia. I don't mean anything against Georgia, but, kids and teenagers. And, but I forgot they were Montessori kids. And they just looked at me and said, we want to go there.
Yeah.
And so we came back, and here I am.
Wow. So what do you tell your husband? What do you tell your kids? Like, we're packing up, we're moving here. Well,
Koinonia had kind of moved away from its communal roots in the 90s. I think for understandable reasons, but it didn't work out. And so it kind of went through some struggles in the 90s, different struggles than it went through in the 50s and 60s, but some struggles. And so they had adopted in the 90s a nonprofit business model. Absolutely nothing wrong with nonprofit businesses. We need them. And but it just wasn't working for Koinonia. But they still had that model, and so they were doing a national search for an executive director. And my life was great in Houston, and I had it all planned out, and I had my roadmap.
Yeah.
And David Castle, who was a board member who actually was living at Koinonia at that time, was talking to me about the position. And I said, well, if you'd give me a job description, I'd like to pass it out to a few people I know in Houston. And so he did that. And then he said, what about you? And I said, no.
Yeah.
So that was November of 2003. In January 2004, there was the last weekend of January. The board brought in the 4 finalists for the job. So I actually came to Koinonia the conventional way.
Okay.
And so Jim and I were offered the opportunity. But the reason, you asked me, what did my kids say? What did my husband say? Well, when I went back in November with this job description, firmly saying no, I was kind of joking with Jim about this opportunity. And normally he's very good at asking clarifying questions, but he really has always encouraged me to think and make. He never tells me what what to do, and he didn't that time either. But I was kind of chuckling about moving to Georgia and or applying for this position, and he was silent, and I looked over at him and he said, "I think you should do it." Wow. If he hadn't said that, I don't think I would have. But something moved him to say that. My kids are we have a son, daughter, son. And the two, our son and oldest son and daughter were pretty much out. Our youngest son was a senior in high school. So we were getting him all ready to go off to college. So it felt like a time that we could make a change.
Yeah.
I think they sometimes would joke that their parents were going off to join a hippie commune. Koinonia is not a hippie commune.
Yeah.
I don't know. It may have been one at one time, but that's not what it was founded to be. It's certainly not what it is now. Not that I have anything wrong with hippie communes. I mean, probably some good things happened in them, but that's not what Koinonia is, and not the vision for Koinonia.
Yeah.
So here I am, and
yeah. So tell me, what is a week, a day in the life of you at the farm?
Well, every day, Monday through Friday, anyway, we begin our day with chapel, and that's just such an incredible way to begin the day, to remember why we're there. We're there to follow Jesus and to be a place of welcome, to be a place that can respond with whatever talents we have there and whatever abilities. We're always responding to the needs and challenges of the times, usually on a very small scale, because we're a very small community, don't have a whole lot of like financial resources or anything like that. So we start with chapel. At the end of chapel, we always have morning circle, and we kind of have announcements and what people will be doing that day. And there might be some people coming into town to Harvest of Hope, or somebody going to Stewart Detention Center with backpacks. And now we're going to be able to visit the detainees again. That was taken away during COVID. And then we go out and we do, and we have our own bakery there. So that online business is what really provides us our main source of income. But we are a place of hospitality. So we have all these visitors that come all the time. Yeah. And so we're always doing different projects. On the farm, we're doing hospitality, and we have an internship program. So we have 3 different terms, groups of interns that come through, and so it has a study component and service component and work component. So we're doing that, and sustainable farming. Actually, that is the hardest one.
Yeah. Yes.
Because sustainable farming requires a farmer. And farmers have to come and stay. And we certainly have more people coming and going than we have coming and staying, because in the 90s, when we went through that, a lot of great people, but a lot of the people that were there for the community moved on. So it's going to take, I think, a long time. It has been taking a long time to kind of rebuild that core group of people that will stay there and do all the things that we do. We are very much relationship we've always been focused on relationship, but we're very, very careful not getting into programs because the person that's passionate about the program, might move on, and then there you have that program and no one to run it, and you can really disappoint a lot of people that way.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of traveling and talking about different, about Koinonia, of course, but other things as well. I try to spend a certain amount of my week writing and talking. I'm actually a certified, whatever that means, spiritual director. So I spend a time one-on-one with people, and we always have lunch together.
Yeah.
And that's a joy with guests and visitors. And thank you for coming out. And yes, you did the short tour, but you need to come back for the long tour.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a chance to watch the film, Briars and the Cotton Patch. I did do that, and yeah, I definitely need to come back out there and finish.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Well, let me ask you this: since we're talking about Koinonia, let's just do some basic stuff as far as what does that mean? What does Koinonia mean?
Koinonia is a New Testament Greek word, and it means communion. It means fellowship. It means community. And my understanding is that first, Jesus the Jew and his Jewish apostles, and then it kind of morphed into the way, people following the way being Jesus, and then it was referred to as the Koinonia, so the church, and then it was the church. So Koinonia is it's what the early church was called before it became church.
Yeah. And how did that start? When did that start? Kind of give me just a brief run through how it started.
How Koinonia started? Yeah. Clarence Jordan was from Talbotton, Georgia, and just down the road or up the road. I can't remember which direction it is. Somebody seeing this will tell me what direction it is. Yes. He came from a good Southern background, upper middle class, but he decided he wanted to pursue agriculture because he really felt like if he knew more about scientific farming, he could go and be involved with the tenant farmers, still tenant farmers then, black and white, and bring some of this scientific knowledge to farming. But as he approached the end of his undergraduate degree, he felt a call to the ministry. So he went to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah. And
got his PhD. He became a New Testament Greek scholar. So the guy was brilliant, charismatic, died way too young, only 57. So he had this, he wanted to, he thought if small groups of people would come together, live like the early church lived, share things, because if you share things, then you have more things that other people might need.
Yeah.
And so he and his wife Florence and another couple, Martin and Mabel England, decided to do this experiment in Christian living, which the experiment was you open the Acts of the Apostles and there's this description. So he was trying to do what Scripture said, taking it literally.
Yeah.
And so they came in officially in November 1942. So Koinonia just turned 80 years old.
Wow.
So he had a vision of being a community of people, praying, working, serving, and farming was huge. He brought the chicken business, as I understand it, to Southwest Georgia. And people would come to see because he had so many chickens and they were all laying, and how did he do that?
Yeah.
And he shared this knowledge with others and in the area, and but farming was the way that the community earned a living. And then there it was just a different time. And when Koinonia got in trouble because it really practiced all people, no matter their race, background, etc., whatever, are brothers and sisters. And at that time, it was frowned upon, more than frowned upon, to sit at table with a person if you were white, to sit with a person that was black. And so Koinonia got into trouble, had a lot of visits from the clan. And so it was a hard time, but Koinonia tried to be faithful, never returned any violence with violence. Then an economic boycott was, the people wanted Koinonia to leave because it's kind of stirring things up in ways that people weren't comfortable with. And, I can certainly understand that. But Koinonia felt like, we needed to be faithful to our understanding of what Scripture says. And so there was an economic boycott, and no one would sell to or buy from Koinonia, at least not out in the light.
Yeah.
There was some help in the darkness.
What was Koinonia selling at the time?
Well, we had at the time a roadside stand where we had hams, chickens, and we had what was called a candy kitchen, and we had different fruitcake and different things like that. And that roadside stand was blown up not once but twice.
Wow.
But what happened when the boycott? Someone suggested the mail order. You can send things through the mail. So Koinonia started doing that. So we had a mail order business, which of course now is morphed into an online business.
Yeah. Wow.
Even though we do have a store on site as well as online. So
when that boycott happened, how did Koinonia survive?
I think by being faithful. A lot of people left. It was just, really dangerous. It's a miracle that somebody wasn't killed. So the community got very small, but it had this, we now call it the bakery. And then it was called the Candy Kitchen. I sort of like Candy Kitchen a little.
Yeah.
I like
it's got
that.
a good word to it.
I don't know when the name changed, but it did. And so that's how it survived, and it continued to be a place of welcome. And, we have a lot of college groups that come. We have, like I say, visitors from all over the world. I was just writing today to a couple who are from Greece who came to do our internship program with us. And they were here in the spring of 2020. So, so we know what happened then. So,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking about a word. So I try to pull out different values that we see on the podcast because I think that being what we would call a next level neighbor is someone who has certain values. I think one of the most important ones is the idea or the value of wonder, because when we get a chance to really hear people's story, it means that we're interested in such a way that it draws people to share. And I think like that's the core of that being a next level neighbor is wonderment, not assuming that you know people, but just really asking questions and getting to know people. And then there's other things like sacrifice. But one of the words that I thought about when I read about Clarence Jordan was this idea of resilience. I read a book over the past year and a half called The Infinite Game by a guy named Simon Sinek. And the basics of it is that sometimes we play the finite game, which is wins and loses, wins and losses, and we're constantly going this. But if we play the infinite game, it's how does our organization or business or just our family, how do we actually just survive? Let's stop thinking about wins and losses, and let's just keep playing the game. We want to just keep playing the game. And he uses that terminology. But when I think about Koinonia, I think about, Clarence was thinking about the long game. He wasn't just thinking about, okay, are we winning or losing today? It was, we want this idea of community to survive.
Right.
And so we're just going to keep learning how to do that. And if this gets taken away or if this gets pushed, we still want to continue to do what we need to do. And so that was one of the things that I just noticed about him. What are some things, some values that you think about when you think about Clarence?
Well, he was, is a word that I've already used several times. He was very faithful to his understanding of Scripture. And he was a New Testament Greek scholar. So he was reading, he knew what the words meant. And I think he fell in love with the word, the capital W. And he really, he persevered. He gave of himself. He worked very hard, both his intellect and his ability to be a farmer. I mean, what a great combination. He was a scholar farmer.
Yeah.
And he made himself available. He was a sought after speaker, not so much in Georgia during that time. At first he was, but then that period he wasn't. But he traveled all over the country and really challenging people, I think, in a good way about, if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, then, put on the flesh.
Yeah.
Don't, make Jesus pretty and put him up in heaven and I'll see you in the by and by. It's like, what are you doing right now? And doing the best you can to be in a relationship with people, be a neighbor to people. One of the stumbling, I'll be honest with you, one of the stumbling blocks for me is I've spent so much time at Koinonia, going away from Koinonia, talking to people, giving talks here and there, and then being back at Koinonia and trying to do my work there physically on the farm and all the visitors that are coming. But if I had to do it all over again, I would spend more time out in the Americus community. And I'm hoping that the last half of my time as a community member at Koinonia, which we did return to the original vision. We had in 2005, we returned to the original vision. So I am a community member. I do live there. Yeah. And spending more time with the people and with the neighbors. But Koinonia and Clarence was just a man. He was a man of this is kind of cliche now, but he was a man of action. He lived it. He didn't just talk it. He lived it. And
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I when I think about Americus, I have been encouraged by where it's at since reading material like that and kind of seeing the history. What do you think about, how do you think Clarence would respond now to the way that things are?
Probably the same way he responded then.
Yeah.
He was a funny man, smart, so smart, and a good neighbor. And he would be a good neighbor. Yeah. And he would go and do what he could do with the resources he had. Yeah. It was his idea to start this fund for humanity, and this fund for humanity would do a number of things, and one of those things was build houses. Yeah, and of course that became, well, first it was Koinonia Partnership Housing, and then it ultimately went on from Koinonia and became Habitat, and now we have the Fuller Center for Housing. So many things were birthed at at Koinonia.
Yes.
So it's sort of this incubator,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of people from Koinonia have gone on to do really great work.
Do you think that if he were to see now, for example, just Americus as a city, and see how it's integrated, we know that there's still things that we need to continue to grow and progress in.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think that he would be happy about that, or do you think that he would have a continual drive to see some other things happen as well?
I think he would have continual drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he was a pretty challenging guy, not in an arrogant way, but he really tried to live it. And a lot of people that really try to live it down deep into their bones get into trouble. So he'd probably be in trouble.
Yeah, that's
about
right.
something.
That's right. No, that's good. Well, let me ask you this. What are some, you had mentioned a little bit, but what are some common misconceptions when people think about Koinonia?
Oh, gosh. I think, they think of hippie commune, which, depending on your age, some people wouldn't think a hippie commune is such a bad thing, but they don't see the connection between Koinonia and being dedicated to live like Jesus asked us to live. That's all we're trying to do. And I'm not saying that other people aren't doing it in their walks of life, but that's what we're trying to do at Koinonia. And I guess because of my Montessori background and some other background things that I have, living in community isn't strange to me. You go to other parts of the world and you have families, extended families living together, and you have villages. So it may not be I just think it's we're like everybody else, except we live on houses on a piece of land, and we are welcoming people, and we're trying to do different projects, and we're trying to serve people the best we can with the number of people that we have. It's not. It's just not. It's not. I've met some people, and they think it's weird. I invite people to come out. You're just people. Yeah. Yeah. You get more people than this.
Yeah. So, that's right. That's right.
So.
Well, if someone were looking to become a part, whether that's a participant or even a member of the Koinonia family, what are some ways that people can connect?
Yes. Well, first of all, people here in Americus, come to lunch, come out for a tour. And we have many people who do, but you can just, give us a call, go on the website, set a time so we can make sure we make enough extra food and come have lunch with us. So that's one way. To become a member is a process. You can't just walk in and become a member. It's a real commitment, and it takes a while to go through the process to become a member. But we have an internship program. We have people from Americus who have done the internship. People from Greece, I just mentioned, people from Germany, but mostly people from the United States. And it's not just an internship for young people, though, quite a few people, they can take a little more time when they're
a little bit younger.
Yeah. So they come as an intern. We also have something called CSAS, which is Come Stay a While and Serve program. And we have, in fact, our new CSAS program starts this weekend, and we have about, how many people? Like 10 coming, for that.
Yeah.
And so that's a way to get involved. And if someone becomes interested in becoming a member, there is a process by which you do that. You are first a novice, and there's steps until you make your final commitment. And your final commitment is just as far as the eye can see.
Yeah.
We're not asking for life vows or anything like that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. When people ask you about Americus, how do you describe Americus?
Oh, well, I often describe it by talking about Sumter players.
Okay.
There you go. And Cafe Campesino and Fuller Center for Housing and Habitat for Humanity, because those are those are the places I know. I wish I was more involved with Sumter players. I really enjoyed the one play I did there, but I love that we have 2 colleges here.
Yeah. When you think about maybe the next 10 to 15 years, considering Americus as a city, what are some things that you hope for?
I would. Again, this is probably, not probably, it absolutely has to be. I wish we would get a annual play that draws people from all over the world.
Yeah.
I wish we would get an annual film festival to draw people from all over the world. There's nothing, I usually think, pretty, I'm very practical.
Yeah, I was about to say,
I'm very practical, but when you give me, I love to, so, I just wish we would find ways, to do things more things together. And maybe I'm just speaking because as I say, I travel a lot, and then I'm at the farm, and there's probably a lot more to do together with other people other than people at the farm. But I just have a lot of respect and love for Americus, and I think it is a place that is. I mean, just in someone from Koinonia to see the growth that that has happened, but we have a long way to go, and I wish the races would come together more, and I'm not talking about not honoring each other's. Because sometimes races coming together, it means let's all melt down and look more like me. Yeah, and I don't mean that at all. I think everybody has their beautiful traditions, and I'd like to see our public schools more, integrated. It's just I really fell in love with Americus, and I hope. As I probably enter my last years at Koinonia, that I get to do more in Americus and getting to know the people in Americus, and someone else can sit in my chair and do all the traveling. Yeah,
that's right. That's
right. All the speaking engagements and things like that. So.
Well, with what I've heard from you, even the last few times that we've just discussed, I think you would be a great asset, just as you continue to get more and more involved in the city, and see some of those things even come to light. Let me ask you this: what are some basic principles that Koinonia does that you could share with us to help us be better neighbors in our own communities, whether it's in our street or just in a larger context? What are some principles that would just be helpful for just a neighbor?
We try to make time for each other and for people, for our visitors, for our neighbors. We try to, we work hard, but we try to work at I'll tell a quick story.
Okay.
Clarence Jordan and Millard Fuller, who was a member of Koinonia that went on to found Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
Millard was a young man. He met Clarence, and he was firing all these questions, and they were packing pecans, and finally, Millard was asking so many questions, and finally Clarence, just kind of sat down on the bag of pecans or a stool there or something, and Millard said, "Oh, Clarence, I'm sorry, I'm keeping you from your work. I apologize. I'm just talking your ear off." And Clarence said, "People are more important than pecans." Mm-hmm. And so, Koinonia just has this. We want to be in relationship with each other and with other people. Mm. So that's one thing that we do.
Yeah,
hospitality is huge, and I think Americus is a hospitable place, but Koinonia, we really welcome this whole idea that you may be welcoming angels, or you may be welcoming Jesus himself. So we are a place of welcome. So I think that's very important. We're also this is a little more controversial. We are really trying to learn how to grow pecans without fungicides, insecticides. We're trying to grow things naturally, and it's a long, hard experiment, as any other pecan farmer around here will tell you. But we really we focus on the soil, and we're trying to get our soil as healthy as possible, because doesn't it make sense that healthy food would come out of healthy soil? So we're doing a lot of that kind of work. I was able to. Got invited and was able to teach a playwriting course at Georgia Southwestern. I wish
that's great.
The whole theater thing was still going on there, and that I would have another chance to. So Koinonia is always doing, like I say, responding to. We're very humble, very quiet, very small, but we really want to be in relationship and do what we can with the people that we have.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, it definitely sounds like hospitality, but with that, there's intentionality, which means that you create space for new environments, for new people to come in. And I think being a next level neighbor, being just a good neighbor, following the ways of Jesus, is you have to do it in such a way, in such a pace, that you almost have to be ready for the urgent and have time for it. And so, and we don't really live in a world, in a culture that gives you guiltless margin. Right. It's just not available. So if you're not doing something, that means you're being lazy.
Right.
But if we don't create margin, then it's hard to be available to people. And that's what it sounds like to me, is you're being hospitable, you're being intentional with that hospitality, so that you can bring other people in, just when they're just ready.
Right.
And so I think those things are huge. I thank y'all so much for what you guys have done, what that means for this city, with it going, all the turmoil and the tension that's been there, but at the same time, how it's going to continue to stay here and be a great reminder of what community looks like. So let me ask you this as we kind of wrap up. How do you describe your favorite time of year? What's your favorite time of year?
Well, even before coming to Koinonia, I love the fall.
Okay.
It's just a beautiful time. Well, at Koinonia, we earn most of our budget in 2 months, November and December, because of our online business. But in the fall, just the change. Of course, weather's kind of unpredictable right now, but I love how it suddenly becomes cooler, and everybody's so focused at Koinonia on the pecan harvest and making the things in the bakery, and then shipping shipping the nuts out of Georgia or within Georgia.
Yeah.
And so I love the fall at Koinonia. And I say that, and then I instantly think about the spring when we have, spring break groups coming.
Yeah.
And, we have guest housing. We have, I hope a lot of people that are hearing this will come out for a tour, sign up for a tour, and come out and see us. And
absolutely. What's the website called if they want?
KoinoniaFarm.org.
Okay, all right. That's how you can get connected to that. Absolutely. Go to lunch. Consider their internship. And consider just going and supporting them and just posting something about them if you get a chance. All right, let me ask you this. I got two more questions. What are you currently reading right now when you have time to read?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the duties I have, or one of the privileges I have, is I'm also the internship coordinator. So I'm very close to the day-to-day life of that program and the people involved in that program. And we just finished a book by Jamar Tisby on how to fight racism, which really, even living at Koinonia, even living in Americus, even with my Montessori background and it was an eye opener.
Wow.
And another one we read. I'm hoping I'm getting the title right. The Art of Affection by Wendell Berry.
Okay.
So this farmer, we do read about farming at Koinonia, but he's such a philosopher and such a lover of the land. And so those are the two that just popped into my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Last question. Just summarize for me. I know we've talked about it in bits and pieces. When you hear the word community, what does that mean to you?
It means joy to me. It means people coming together. It means raising a barn. I guess we don't raise barns too much anymore, but in ways, Koinonia has raised a lot of barns. We started helping people with home repairs, and then let's start building houses. And it means too people, the petty side of people, and but when you make a commitment to each other, you've made a promise to talk it out.
Yeah.
And it's so easy I think in the US, not so much in rural. Maybe that's why I like the rural life better but it's if suddenly you don't like somebody, or you don't like this church, or you just move, you just go away. But in community, you've made at least an intentional community like Koinonia. But I think I've seen it beyond Koinonia for sure. You are there for the good times and the bad times.
Yeah.
And you make a commitment to work it out.
Yeah.
So we serve God at and through this place called Koinonia, and we're there to support each other and to support our town as much as we can in the ways we can, most of which, as I say, are very, very small and quiet. So,
yeah. Oh, I just had a question that just kind of popped up in my mind because we're talking about community, then we're talking about church. Is Koinonia? Is it a church? Is it a family that goes to a church, or what is that dynamic?
Right. We function as a house church. As I said, we begin with chapel every morning, and then we have gathered worship on Sunday evening. But the thing I love about Koinonia is almost from the beginning is that they also went to churches in town, if you will. Yeah. And so we are Baptist and Lutheran and Mennonite and Catholic and I love that. And all of these different denominations, if you will, can come together and live together in peace. We can get along.
Wow.
But it's also wonderful to go out on, depending on which tradition you're in, you go out on Saturday to church or Sunday to church, and you have, because Koinonia was never meant to be an island. It was always about being a neighbor and reaching out and being involved. And I mean, we've had periods of Koinonia's history before we kind of lost the communal part in the 90s, where school teachers, they were nurses. So
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's a good clarifying question for me too. Well, listen, Bren, thank you so much for coming on our podcast, for sharing a little bit of your story and telling us a little bit about the past of Koinonia, and also just kind of where it is right now and hopes of it for the future. And I'm so glad to be a part of this community. And I get to take some of the principles that you even shared today and just continue to live out in my neighborhood. So thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Well, thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it. And you need to come back to Koinonia for the long tour.
That's right. And that is called hospitality.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Thank you. That was great, Bren. Thank you so much.